In the summer of 1955, 14-year-old Emmett Till, Bobo to his friends, stood on the cusp of an adventure. Little did he know, this journey would etch his name into the annals of history, not for triumph, but for tragedy. He was bursting with excitement for a trip from Chicago to Mississippi, a world away from his familiar city streets. The promise of new experiences and family reunions filled his young heart with anticipation. He was a lively, confident teen, always ready with a joke and a playful jab. Emmett possessed a natural charisma that drew people to him, a spirit that shone brightly in the bustling streets of Chicago, and eager for adventure. The allure of the unknown, the stories whispered by his relatives who had made the journey before, fueled his desire to explore his southern roots. His mother, Mamie Till, a strong and fiercely protective woman, harbored deep worries about the dangers of the Jim Crow South. She knew the stark reality of racial prejudice that permeated every aspect of life below the Mason-Dixon line. She spent countless hours warning him to be careful and respectful, impressing upon him the importance of adhering to the rigid social codes of the South. Her words were a mother's plea born from a lifetime of navigating a world fraught with racial injustice. Emmett promised, his youthful optimism perhaps blinding him to the true gravity of his mother's concerns. He couldn't truly grasp the risks awaiting him, the insidious nature of a system designed to oppress and dehumanize. The train ride south was a journey into a different America, a stark contrast to the relative freedoms Emmett enjoyed in Chicago. The landscape began to change, mirroring the shift in social dynamics and racial tensions, where segregation grew more pronounced with every mile. Water fountains, restrooms, even entire sections of towns were divided along racial lines, a constant reminder of the deeply entrenched inequality. For Emmett and his cousin Wheeler Parker Jr., the trip was a chance to escape city life, to trade the concrete jungle for the open fields and slower pace of the Mississippi Delta, and connect with family in the Delta. They envisioned lazy summer days filled with laughter, shared meals, and the warmth of familial bonds. Mississippi's air was thick with history and tension, a palpable weight that hung heavy over the land. The echoes of slavery and the ongoing struggle for civil rights permeated the atmosphere. A world away from Chicago, the bustling metropolis with its diverse communities and opportunities felt like a distant memory. Emmett, a city boy, spent his days picking cotton, laboring under the scorching sun alongside his relatives. It was a stark introduction to the realities of rural life in the South, and his evenings entertaining relatives with stories of home, regaling them with tales of city life and the vibrant culture of Chicago. He was a captivating storyteller, bringing joy and laughter to those around him. He was a visitor, unaware of the peril his presence represented, a naive outsider stepping into a world governed by unspoken rules and deeply ingrained prejudices. In a deeply segregated society, his youthful exuberance and carefree spirit would soon collide with the harsh realities of racial injustice. His journey south would soon become a descent, a tragic plunge into the darkest depths of human cruelty and racial hatred, into the heart of American darkness, a place where innocence would be brutally extinguished and a nation forced to confront its own moral failings. Emmett Till was Mamie Till Mobley's only child, her pride and joy. He represented the future, a beacon of hope in a world often clouded by injustice. Mamie poured all her love and aspirations into Emmett, nurturing his spirit and guiding him through life's challenges. He was, without a doubt, the light of her life. Their connection was profound, a bond forged in mutual respect and unwavering affection. Every smile, every milestone was a shared victory, a testament to their unbreakable relationship. Their bond was strong, shaped by love and resilience in Chicago's South Side. This vibrant community served as both a backdrop and a support system, a place where family ties ran deep and neighbors looked out for one another. It was a haven where they could be themselves, away from the harsh realities of a segregated nation. Mamie worked tirelessly, often holding multiple jobs, to give Emmett not just the necessities but also a sense of pride and self-worth, qualities she knew would be essential for him to navigate a world that often sought to diminish him. She wanted him to know his value regardless of what society might dictate. This was no easy feat, given the pervasive and insidious nature of the world's prejudice. Segregation and discrimination were woven into the fabric of American society, creating barriers and limitations for black individuals at every turn. Mamie knew she had to arm Emmett with the strength to overcome these obstacles. Emmett had survived polio, a childhood illness that left him with a slight stutter, a minor physical challenge that he faced with remarkable courage. This experience, however, did not define him. He possessed an undimmed spirit, a zest for life that shone brightly despite the adversity he faced. He was a happy child, full of laughter and curiosity, eager to explore the world around him. The family, like many black families during the Great Migration, had moved north from the south, seeking a better life, a place where opportunities were more abundant and the threat of racial violence was less pronounced. They sought opportunity and, most importantly, safety from the South's deeply ingrained racial violence, the constant fear of which cast a long shadow over their lives. The stories of lynchings and other atrocities were a stark reminder of the dangers they had left behind. Emmett's father, Louis Till, had died under tragic and controversial circumstances while serving in World War II, a loss that deeply impacted Mamie and shaped her determination to provide a stable and loving home for her son. The details surrounding his death were shrouded in mystery and misinformation, a fact that was later twisted and manipulated to smear the family's reputation and deflect from the true injustices they faced. Despite this profound loss and the challenges they faced, Mamie instilled in Emmett a sense of hope and ambition, encouraging him to dream big and believe in his potential. She emphasized the importance of education, encouraging his dreams and fostering a love of learning that would empower him to shape his own destiny. She knew that knowledge was a powerful weapon against ignorance and prejudice. Their Chicago community was vibrant and supportive, a tapestry of families and individuals who shared similar experiences and aspirations. It offered a sense of belonging and cultural pride that contrasted sharply with the oppressive atmosphere of the Jim Crow South, where segregation and discrimination were the law of the land. Trips to Mississippi to visit relatives were intended as a way to reconnect with family roots and heritage, to bridge the gap between their northern lives and their southern ancestry. These visits were meant to be a celebration of family, a time for shared stories and laughter, not an invitation to the unspeakable tragedy that would soon unfold, but the deep, festering wounds of racial injustice, long left unaddressed, would soon erupt, turning their personal story of love and resilience into a national tragedy, a catalyst for change that would forever alter the course of American history. On August 24, 1955, Emmett and his cousins visited Bryant's grocery in Money, Mississippi. The store, run by Roy and Carolyn Bryant, was a local hub for sharecroppers. After buying candy, Emmett allegedly said, "Bye, baby," to Carolyn Bryant, perhaps with a whistle, perhaps not. His cousins immediately sensed danger. They knew the deadly consequences of crossing racial lines in Mississippi. Carolyn Bryant later claimed Emmett was aggressive, but decades later admitted she had lied about the most damning details. Her false story painted Emmett as a threat, fueling her husband's rage. In 2007, she confessed Emmett never touched or threatened her. But in 1955, her accusation was all it took to set a tragedy in motion. A lie would soon cost a boy his life and shock the world. In the dead of night, in the early hours of August 28, 1955, a chilling darkness enveloped the small town of Money, Mississippi. The air was thick with humidity, and the silence was broken only by the distant sounds of crickets and the rustling of leaves. Little did anyone know this night would become etched in history as a night of unspeakable terror. Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam, two men consumed by hate and prejudice, stormed Moses Wright's home, the residence where young Emmett Till was staying, demanding Emmett with menacing voices that echoed through the night. Despite desperate pleas from his family, who begged for Emmett's life, tears streaming down their faces as they pleaded for mercy, they dragged Emmett from his bed, tearing him away from the safety of his family and the familiar surroundings of the home. He was taken to a barn, a desolate and isolated place, far from prying eyes, where he was brutally beaten and tortured for hours, subjected to unimaginable cruelty and suffering at the hands of his captors. The violence was deliberate, a calculated act of brutality, a warning to the black community, a message of fear and intimidation meant to keep them in their place and maintain the status quo of racial segregation. Finally, after hours of torment, they shot Emmett, ending his young life in a senseless act of violence. To further dehumanize him and conceal their heinous crime, they tied a heavy cotton gin fan to his neck with barbed wire and dumped his lifeless body into the murky waters of the Tallahatchie River, hoping to bury their guilt along with him. They believed the river would erase their crime, that the dark waters would forever conceal their brutality and silence the voice of injustice. But fate had other plans. 3 days later, Emmett's mutilated body surfaced, a grim testament to the brutality he had endured, a haunting image that would forever be etched in the memory of a nation. He was identified only by his father's ring, a small but significant piece of evidence that would ultimately unravel the conspiracy of silence. The horror could not be hidden. The truth was too powerful to remain submerged. The discovery forced the nation, kicking and screaming, to confront the reality of racial terror, to acknowledge the deep-seated prejudice and systemic injustice that plagued American society. Emmett's murder was no longer a rumor. It was no longer something whispered in hushed tones behind closed doors. It was a horrifying fact, a brutal reality that could no longer be ignored or denied. The stage was set for a national reckoning, a turning point in the fight for civil rights and equality, forever changing the course of American history. When Emmett's body returned to Chicago, officials urged Mamie Till Mobley to keep the casket closed. She refused, insisting the world see what had been done to her son. For 5 days, thousands viewed Emmett's battered body at Roberts Temple Church. Jet magazine published photos shocking the nation and the world. The open casket made Emmett Till's death impossible to ignore. Mamie's courage turned private grief into public protest. The images ignited outrage, fueling the growing civil rights movement. Emmett became a symbol of racial violence, a face that demanded justice. Mamie's act forced America to confront its own brutality. Her decision ensured Emmett would not be forgotten. The world could no longer look away. The trial of Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam began in a segregated Mississippi courtroom under global scrutiny. The all-white jury and hostile atmosphere made justice unlikely. Moses Wright bravely identified the killers, risking his life. Black witnesses testified, but the defense played to racist fears, painting Emmett as the aggressor. They argued the body was unidentifiable and suggested a conspiracy. After just 67 minutes, the jury found Bryant and Milam not guilty. The verdict was celebrated by white spectators, a blatant miscarriage of justice. The world reacted with outrage and disgust. The trial exposed the bankruptcy of Southern justice. In Mississippi, the murder of a black child went unpunished. Emmett Till's murder and the acquittal of his killers became a catalyst for the civil rights movement. The injustice awakened a generation, transforming fear into resolve. Rosa Parks, inspired by Emmett's story, refused to give up her seat just months later, sparking the Montgomery bus boycott. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. often cited Emmett's case as a call to action. Emmett's story united activists, fueling sit-ins, freedom rides, and non-violent resistance. His death became a foundational story for the movement. The image of his open casket created a shared outrage that crossed racial lines. Emmett became a symbol of innocence destroyed and a rallying cry for justice. His memory inspired a generation to demand equality no matter the cost. Months after their acquittal, Bryant and Milam confessed to Emmett's murder in a paid magazine interview, safe from prosecution. Their chilling admission removed any doubt about their guilt. Carolyn Bryant remained silent for decades, her lies at the heart of the tragedy. In 2007, she finally admitted she had fabricated her testimony. Despite this, no new charges were filed. The statute of limitations and lack of evidence closed the case. The Justice Department reopened investigations, but justice remained elusive. For Emmett's family, the outcome was a bitter disappointment. The truth emerged in confessions and interviews, not in court. The wounds of the case remain open, a reminder that legal justice was never served. Emmett Till's story is a painful, unfinished chapter in America's history. Emmett Till's story still echoes in America's conscience. His name is invoked in the fight against racial violence and injustice, from the Civil Rights era to Black Lives Matter. The parallels between Emmett's death and modern tragedies are stark, showing the struggle continues. In 2022, the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act finally made lynching a federal hate crime. A national monument now honors Emmett and Mamie Till Mobley. Mamie's activism and her decision to show the world her son's body changed history. She turned grief into a force for justice, inspiring generations. Emmett's legacy is a call to confront America's past and present. His story reminds us the fight for civil rights is ongoing. The boy from Chicago became a martyr whose memory demands we never forget and keep striving for justice.